Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Costa Rica event. Come on in. Make yourself comfortable. But yeah, welcome, everybody. We'll be going live in a few minutes as soon as we have everybody in. Evening, Chris from Bedford. Gordon, Alex, hello. Yes, do say where you're joining us from. We're always interested. Colin from Bournemouth. Oh, everybody's flooding in now. Lincolnshire, Toronto. Welcome to Marion from Toronto. Chile, Glasgow. Ooh, Bedfordshire, Derbyshire. See, we cover the world here. Acton, Chippenham, which isn't far from here. Aberdeenshire, Cornwall. And miserable rainy Thanet, Kent. That's sad. Evening from Stockport, Cambridge, Iverheath, Ecuador. Good evening. Oh, Diego Torres, our Wanderlust Guide of the Year. Good evening from Ecuador. Oxfordshire, York, Bowden, Bristol. Coming in, we've got somebody coming in from Arizona, Yuma, Arizona. Evening, Carla. Edinburgh, Brighton, Chester, West Sussex, Dartmouth, Norwich, Hampshire, Stratford-on-Avon. Welcome all. Sorry, it's too many of you to be reading out your names. Sligo in Ireland, Surrey, Glasgow, West Yorkshire, so Cumbria, Devon. Right, from Denmark, welcome Christian from Denmark. Tipperary, Chicago. So, and Simmons Yat, we've got our regular friend from Simmons Yat. Pangbourne, Bristol, London, Reading. See, we do cover the world with these events. Welcome. Grimsby. I've got the weather's like in Grimsby. Suffolk, Cambridgeshire, Leicestershire, Costa, London. Oh, yes. Perthshire. So welcome, welcome. Come on in. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes once we've got a few more people on. And yeah, welcome to this special evening on Costa Rica. I'm Lyn Hughes, the founder and editor of Wanderlust. And like I say, we will be starting in a moment. But first of all, so we know a little bit about you. We'd love to know whether you've actually been to Costa Rica or not. So we're just going to do a little poll. So if you could please say whether you, how many of you have been to Costa Rica or not. So yes, we've got a lot of people on tonight who have been, but presumably want to probably go again. And but we've got an awful lot more people. Perhaps 65% of you haven't been and you want to learn more. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much from that. Still people coming in, Macclesfield, Bedford, Zeals. So, and somebody in Bedfordshire, so welcome all. Silver Spring, where's Silver Spring? Winchester, somebody who went 30 years ago. So, yes, I wonder if it's changed much. And lots of people saying they'd love to go again. I'm not surprised. Okay, well, well, you've seen at least 2 people whose holidays were booked for this year have been cancelled. I know it's been such a frustrating year, hasn't it? So, yeah, so feel for you. And but yes, it's definitely a bucket list item. So thank you, all of those of you who did the poll. In a few minutes, I'll introduce you to our guest speakers. We've got a lot of people on tonight, so if any of you do have connection issues, because this is peak time for using broadband, so if you have connection issues or it freezes, either click on the reconnect button or refresh the page. And also, so you're aware, if you do have problems, we do send out a link to a recording of the evening within a few days. So you would be able to watch it again at your own leisure, because we've got some great photos and videos tonight. So yeah, do bear that in mind. You will be able to see a recording of it. And this evening is part of a campaign that we're currently doing with Costa Rica, and it's called Find Your Sanctuary in Costa Rica. We have a dedicated website for it. You may have been in on some of our other events that we've run over the last month. And at the end of this evening, we'll have the web address for the Costa Rica Sanctuary site, so you can go and find more information there. And tonight has a bit of a focus on sustainability, and with good reason. Costa Rica is synonymous with sustainability. They really are leading the way, I think, in the world to show how a country can really benefit from sustainability, how the people and livelihoods can benefit from sustainability, and of course how wildlife and natural places can. So that will be underpinning our talks tonight, and it's been really inspiring to see what Costa Rica are doing. But now for tonight's speakers. You've got 4 of us tonight, and we're each talking about different places or things about Costa Rica that we have fallen in love with. And I'll be speaking briefly first about a very special place that I've stayed, and then about Tortuguero on the Caribbean coast. I'll then hand over to Chloe Gunning. Chloe is a top UK travel blogger with a passion for adventure, food and memorable experiences. And since 2014, she's been travelling full time all over the world. Let's face it, we're all jealous of Chloe. But despite going to so many places, Costa Rica is a place that keeps her going back for more. And then we'll be handing over to Sian Lewis. Sian's an award-winning blogger and travel journalist who's obsessed with all things outdoor adventure. Her blog, The Girl Outdoors, has picked up multiple awards, including Travel Blog of the Year in 2018, as well as Travel Blog of the Year 2015 and Outdoor Blog of the Year 2014. And then last but not least, we'll have Alex Robinson. Alex is an award-winning author, writer and photographer with a passion for Latin America, and he's visited Costa Rica more times than he can remember. And so tonight he'll be sharing his knowledge, advice and recommendations. So welcome all. And once everybody has spoken and shown some beautiful photos, there will be time for a Q&A. We know there'll be lots of questions, so do feel free to put the questions into the chat box as we go along, because we may be able to answer a few of them as we go, but also it just means that as soon as we get into the Q&A, I'll be able to ask our experts the questions and get going straight away. So let's kick off with a video, and this is about sustainability in Costa Rica, and the voiceover is from me. At Wanderlust magazine, responsible and sustainable travel is at the heart of everything we cover and everything we do. We've always cared very much about the environment, and we know our readers do too. So it's no wonder that Wanderlust loves Costa Rica. Pura vida is the phrase that you hear all the time in Costa Rica. Meaning pure life, it's not just a greeting, it's more of a philosophy, a way of life. Costa Rica takes its sustainability seriously, and it's very much a part of its way of life. And so the country now asks visitors to take a look at the Pura Vida Pledge. There are 4 steps to the pledge, and they ask visitors to take on board at least one. The 4 steps are, well, first of all, to choose a travel company and to stay in places with a Certificate of Sustainable Tourism, known as CST. Costa Rica has some of the best eco-lodges in the world, and most of them have the CST certification. Places such as Quarry Lodge, where I've stayed myself, and it has the highest level of certification. Nestled deep in the rainforest, you reach Quarry Lodge by rafting into it. The lodge grows most of its own food, it employs people from local communities, and it runs a range of conservation programs. Like all the best lodges, it offers a range of eco-adventures from its doorstep. The second step is to be carbon conscious. Be aware of your carbon footprint and perhaps donate to local environmental projects. Then thirdly, consider cutting back, such as through volunteering. This could involve helping out, or at least visiting and supporting in a wildlife reserve, helping animals such as sloths and monkeys, macaws and toucans. Or put something back to the people of Costa Rica by supporting communities and visiting some more off-the-beaten-track type places so that everyone benefits from your visit. Number 4 is to respect the local environment. Costa Rica has incredible biodiversity. Turtles nest on its beaches on both its coastlines. Its forests are alive with a phenomenal range of wildlife, from tree frogs through to jaguars. With its spectacular rivers, its waterfalls, oceans, forests, grasslands and volcanoes, it deserves its reputation as nature's playground. So do help preserve that. And you'll enjoy your visit even more if you do. Costa Rica, it really is a sanctuary for sustainable travel.
Okay, I hope that inspired you. So a couple of years ago, I went to Costa Rica in September, which is considered the rainy season. And in fact, some people advised me not to go there, but I'm so glad that I did go. I'm just going to talk briefly about a couple of places that really stood out for me. On the map, you can see the higher red star is Tortuguero National Park on the Caribbean coast. It was the perfect time of year to be there, and it was actually dry season. The lower star is the Pocari Lodge, which featured in the video, the wonderful eco lodge that you get to by rafting along the Pocari River. There had been a lot of rain, but I found that was an advantage.
So you're guaranteed water, and quite fast water. When we were there, there had been a lot of rain. And it doesn't matter if you're a complete novice at the rafting. So you get training before you go off. They're very safety conscious, and you bond with the other people in the raft, and it makes it for a really exhilarating way, and of course a very eco-friendly way to arrive. And yeah, that's what it looks like. And I think there was 6 people in total in our raft, and it really was a lot of fun and a totally unique way to get there. When you get to the lodge, this is the main sort of eating area, restaurant downstairs, bar upstairs. Everything blends in with the forest around. And what did surprise me when I'd been there 2 or 3 days was finding out that actually a lot of this forest wasn't necessarily old forest, that actually this land had been surrounded by farmland only 30 years earlier. And yet it shows how quickly forest does grow up, because you wouldn't have thought it there. It offers loads of activities. This is lodge has won so many awards. It's actually won, the top eco lodge in the world before. And so you can go zip wiring, you can go bird watching, you can go and visit local communities, including indigenous people. There's just so much to do, and wonderful rooms. They've got it's not a cheap eco lodge. There are cheaper ones along the river, but this one, as it said in the video, it has got the highest level of certification, and it is the sort of place that people do go to for trips of a lifetime, for honeymoons and special occasions. But they do have a massive wide range of accommodation as well, including some at the cheaper end, and then some amazing suites. I was in a sort of in-betweeny type one, if you like, villa, and absolutely wonderful, overlooking the river. They do a lot of good work locally, and a lot of conservation programs are involved in. So, for instance, there are camera traps everywhere for jaguars. It turns out they've got a very high density of jaguars within the grounds and within their land. And when we were there as well, there were also puma tracks on the little river beach where a puma had been the night before. And but the mammal that surprised me most when I was there was this one. We were sitting in the bar, and I suddenly saw something come in, and I thought, oh, what's that? Is it a squirrel? Is it a mongoose or whatever? And it was one of these. It was a kinkajou. And it was completely unfazed, and apparently it was quite a regular visitor. And just very nonchalantly came into the bar, and then looked around a bit and headed off again. So Costa Rica always full of surprises, and that was a delight to see, because I'd been to other places where I was peering up in trees at these things, and so to just have one walk within inches of me was absolutely amazing. But from there, I went to Tortuguero on the Caribbean coast. And this is actually the best time of year. So I was there, like I say, in September, and it's actually the best time of the year, or certainly from July to October, it's the best time of year to be in Tortuguero. This was such a unique place. I wondered why I didn't know about it before I went. And you can see there the ocean coming in. That beach is 35 kilometres long, and it is a really important nesting ground for turtles. In particular, green turtles. In 2016, they reckon 35,000 turtles nested along there, of green turtles. You get other types of turtles there as well, such as very rare hawksbill turtles. And so obviously a really important place. There's a wonderful conservation centre there. They take international volunteers every year to help out there and help patrol the beaches and keep the nests safe, obviously, and try to make sure that you don't get poachers and that you don't get dogs or jaguars or anything sort of going in. That's the intention. They've been really successful. The amount of turtles that are successfully nesting there has grown exponentially over the last decade. So really wonderful place. You can only go on there at night when the turtles come in with a guide. You do have to be with a guide. You're not allowed to take photos. You're not allowed to have a torch. You go in the dark, but it's a really emotional experience, and I really recommend it. And then you see the trees there and a few roofs. That's the village of Tortuguero. It's really small, very friendly, very colourful. And then next to that, you've got it's brackish water. It's a river and canal going out to the sea. But basically, this is a watery wilderness. So you've got a whole canal system here that you can go and explore. And it's just wonderful for flora and for fauna. Really magical. And so here, first of all, this is just the high street, if you like, in the village of Tortuguero. And it's car free, as you can see. It's very narrow, and it's just houses and a few shops and a few cafes. And so then you spend your days exploring the canals and the backwaters. You get motor launches going around. I must admit, they were rather noisy, didn't really like them. You saw a few tourists going past, just whizzing along and then complaining they didn't see anything. So what you do is you make sure that you go out either in a rowboat or a canoe. There's lots of ways, and there's also places where you can go. And there's more and more eco-tourism type activities being developed here, which is really good to see. And you really do see a lot of wildlife, particularly birds, reptiles, and birds and reptiles in particular, monkeys, lots of monkeys, lots of sloths. So this is called, I think it's a basilisk lizard, and absolutely fascinating. I hadn't seen one of these before, and we were fortunate to see quite a few of them. And very, very bright green. We saw a lot of caiman, and coming very close as well. They weren't scared or skittish on us at all. There's one that came right past our boat. Toucans, but we also saw 2 or 3 different types of macaw just on one little boat trip. But like I say, it's the turtles that are the biggest draw of there as well. So if you can go at the time of year when they're there, it is magical. It's advised to pre-book one of the tours that happen after dark. And as I say, you have to be with a guide and you can't take photos. Or, of course, you could find out about being a volunteer there. Right, so that's enough for me. I'm now going to hand over to Chloe. So, first of all, we've got a video from Chloe.
What do you think of when you think of Costa Rica? Volcanoes, waterfalls, wildlife, adventure. For me, it's all of this and more. My love of Costa Rica began with a backpacking trip where I well and truly threw myself into everything that the country has to offer. Ever since, it's somewhere that's kept me coming back for more. And wow, have I had some adventures.
Today we are being intrepid explorers out in the rainforest here in Costa Rica. We're starting our day with a tour of Corcovado. We've already seen monkeys, we've seen macaws, we've seen lots of other things. I'm going to try and show you all of the wildlife. I have a frog right in the middle of my door, and I don't know how to open the door without the frog coming into my room. Dilemmas. On today's little adventure mission, we have left the rainforest and we've come to the waterfall. Going whitewater rafting soon. I've never done it and I am petrified. I am so happy I did that. I giggled nearly the whole time, screamed the rest of it. It was great.
Costa Rica is such a special place. However you decide to spend your time, you're in for a real adventure.
Hello! Wow, I was just having a really lovely trip down memory lane because we can't really travel so much at the moment, so being able to relive some of these experiences pretty special. So I have been to Costa Rica twice. The first time was in 2014 as a kind of backpacker, solo traveler, and then I revisited again a couple of years ago on a press trip. So I'm going to whiz you through a few of my favorite experiences from Costa Rica. You can see how happy I was when I got to that border and crossed over into Costa Rica in that first photo. I think that was my first ever picture taken in Costa Rica. So the first place that I absolutely adore is Corcovado National Park. There are obviously loads of national parks you can visit if you go to Costa Rica, but this one is particularly special. I believe it's known as the most biologically diverse place on Earth, and it is very intense. You kind of see, hear, feel the wildlife everywhere you go, and it's right down on this peninsula in the southwest of the country, and you have a mix of beaches, rainforests, and it is a very, very special place. So when I visited, I was obviously desperate to see, you know, turtles, monkeys, snakes, frogs. And it turns out you don't have to go far to see everything that you've kind of dreamed of when you hear the word Costa Rica. This was taken on the day that we went for a rainforest hike in Corcovado, but we hadn't actually reached the national park. We were about 10 minutes down the road from the hotel. And already we were jumping out of the van. Oh, look, there's scarlet macaws in the trees. And then our guide got a telescope out, and this shot on the right-hand side is I think it's a pink spoonbill, which I managed to take with my camera perched on the telescope, something I'd never seen before. And we weren't even in the national park yet. This is what a trek through Corcovado looks like. Massive trees everywhere. Banana plants. I mean, I'm only 5'2", and the guy in front of me there was, I think, 6'4", and he is still kind of enveloped by this incredible rainforest. At the top right there, you can see, because obviously Corcovado also has the beach. It is really, really special that you can be trekking through the jungle, then zigzagging across the shore of the beach, perhaps seeing some whales or turtles while you're there. And then here you can see some of the wildlife that I took pictures of. This is a little coati down on the beach. You see them everywhere in Corcovado. They're very cheeky creatures, clambering up the trees. One thing I'd really recommend if you do visit Corcovado is you need a guide. So many of the things that we saw on that special day, we wouldn't have found without our guide, who was making monkey sounds and kind of calling all 4 types of Costa Rica's monkeys to us. We saw squirrel monkeys, spider monkeys, howler monkeys, and white capuchins all on that one day. And I just don't think we would have seen them all without our guide helping us. He even found special plants like the one on the right there, which creates a tattoo on your hand. It's like a fern that you kind of plaster down on your hand. And we didn't wash them for a while because they were our little memento. Now, you might be a little bit shocked to hear that these 2 photos were taken at one of Costa Rica's best hotels. They're probably not the welcome sight that you'd expect at a very, very posh hotel, but On the left there, that was waiting for me on my terrace at one of the best eco lodges in Costa Rica, La Rios, which is truly incredible. And I'll show you a little bit more of why I loved it so much in a moment. But these are the kind of experiences that you get when you visit Costa Rica, because it is so wild and rugged and real. The wildlife is just kind of waiting for you wherever you turn. The creature on the left, I was quite happy that it wasn't living at this point, because it was about as big as my foot, and I'm not sure I would have known how to cope with that one. So this is La Rios, one of the best unique eco lodges in the world, and one of the best hotels in Costa Rica. It is set amongst the jungle there, and you can see there are 17 bungalows, a swimming pool, and I think a massage tent or something like that, all nestled there in the trees. And the spiral staircase in the main restaurant was just incredible to look at. The architecture is pretty mesmerizing. And these are the walkways you go along to reach where you're staying. The room there is, that was my bedroom. And you might think that looks very luxurious, but in actual fact, there are no windows. There are purely mosquito nets. So everything that's outside is almost inside, or that's what it feels like. I woke up to the sounds of howler monkeys every morning there, which sound to me a little bit like dinosaurs. It was like a Jurassic Park scene. But yeah, it's truly incredible. You look out of the through that haze of nets, and you can see the rainforest right on your doorstep. To reach this area, so Corcovado is a little bit remote, as you could see on the map earlier, but the best way to reach it is via a little plane from San Jose, the capital. And this is how we actually got back to the capital after our trip. Tiny, tiny plane. You can see our boarding passes, which don't look like any boarding pass I've ever had before. These like laminated things that were reused and reused. And a plane where every seat is a window seat, and these are the kind of views that you get. Just, yeah, incredible. I will never forget that plane journey, and it was one of the highlights of the entire trip. So on to another of my absolute favorite spots. This is Monteverde. And this is one of the areas in the kind of center of the country, and it's known for its cloud forests. You might have seen pictures like this before. These are the special walkways and incredible jungle scenes that you have in Monteverde. Lots of people visit for these kind of views where you're shrouded in mist. You can trek through the jungle. I visited partly for that, but also for this. Zip lining. This is where you'll find the longest zip line in Costa Rica. I flew through those trees, over those trees many times, and absolutely loved the experience. It's something I'd never done before, but it's just such an incredible way to see the landscapes of Costa Rica. But at the end of all of the zip lining, you get to a point where they say, and now would you like to do the Tarzan swing? And I was thinking like, oh, it looks scary up there. It's 50 meters up and it involves a kind of bungee experience. Anyway, I decided I'm only here once. I have to say yes. And this is what happened. I think we've got a little video of this. I have to say, my tummy still goes when I see this video. I can remember the exact feeling as I just flew through the air. Oh, and the worst thing is you have to walk down a platform and then you're basically just told to step out into nothing. It is as terrifying as it sounds, and I'm not sure I'd do it again, but I'm really, really happy that I did it once. Finally, I'm just going to move on to one last favorite place for me in Costa Rica, which is Puerto Viejo, which is right down on the Caribbean coast, and it's known for its very laid-back vibe. It's got the kind of Rasta scene and a Caribbean culture, very different from anywhere else that I visited in Costa Rica. And one of the favorite experiences that I had there was visiting a place called the Jaguar Rescue Center, which is known, there's quite a funny story behind it. There's a couple of biomedical scientists from Europe who decided to move to Costa Rica for a quieter pace of life and a bit of a change. Anyway, the locals cottoned on to the fact that they were obviously experts in biomedical science, and kept turning up on the doorstep of their house with, you know, a sloth which has hurt his arm, or a toucan with a broken beak, or whatever it was. So in the end, they decided that they had to do it. They had to set up some kind of refuge for sick and unwanted animals that needed their care. And the Jaguar Rescue Centre was created. It is incredible. You get very close to the animals, which are receiving kind of treatment and care from the volunteers. And if you haven't managed to see a sloth yet on your trip through Costa Rica, you are guaranteed to see probably 2 or 3 here. A lot of them are harmed by things like electrocutions on power lines, or they're hit by cars. And the work that the Jaguar Rescue Centre does is truly amazing. I've got a little video, which is one of my favourite videos from my time there. Just look at that. I mean, that is what the kind of bucket list experience is when you visit Costa Rica. You want to see a sloth. And I think having that experience, seeing one that was being looked after by the volunteers there, was just amazing. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about some of my highlights of Costa Rica. I'm going to hand back to the guys. I think Sian is up next, and I'm looking forward to some questions at the end too.
Thanks, Chloe. That was great. And we saw a sloth. Yeah, everybody wants to see when they go there. So, like you say, they're not always the easiest to see either, because they tend to be high in trees. So, yeah. But that was really brilliant. Really enjoyed that. Okay, so next up is Sian. And first of all, we're going to have a video from Sian.
In Costa Rica, well-being isn't something you have to seek out or set time apart for. Instead, it's a part of daily life, as I discovered when I travelled there in 2018. I wanted to find the reason why the residents of this lush and laid-back Central American country are listed as some of the happiest, longest living and greenest people on the planet. Costa Rica is the land of pura vida. Translatable as the pure life or the simple life, pura vida is the closest you'll get to a national philosophy based on wellness. It's a local way of life, as well as a phrase commonly used to mean hello and goodbye. Costa Rica is also a country of 2 halves, with the Pacific on one side, the tropical Caribbean Sea on the other, and tall mountains in between. I spent 2 weeks crisscrossing between both coasts, and everywhere I travelled, I found a real sense of well-being and an appreciation for simple pleasures. I practiced yoga in the jungle and surfed at sunset on Masara Beach. I picked and ate amazingly fresh produce at an eco-farm and soaked in natural hot springs at the base of the volcano. One night I swam in waves that sparkled with bioluminescence while listening to curious capuchin monkeys chattering in the nearby trees. On my last day in Costa Rica, I travelled to the Nicoya Peninsula to meet Ezequiel Aguirre Perez, a potter, storyteller and member of the local Indigenous Council. As he sat at his wheel throwing a hunk of clay, I asked him to tell me the secret to Costa Rican wellness. We get a lot of sleep, we eat good fresh food, we respect the earth, and we value the little things in life, he said. I took home a newfound sense of calm and an appreciation for simple pleasures, my own little slice of pura vida. Hi guys! Oh, it's so lovely looking back at photos of Costa Rica. I find it really calming, actually, especially after the interesting year we've all had. It's a real treat to talk about Costa Rica in general, because it's one of my favourite places that I've ever been to. I went there in 2018 for 10 days. And I was just really, really blown away by how beautiful everywhere was and how laid back the lifestyle was. I also found it very friendly, and it's definitely somewhere I'd recommend to solo travellers if you're thinking about going to South America and you're wondering where. I found it a really easy place to get around, whether via public transport or not. And I just think it's it's just a wonderful place to visit. So I hope you're all planning to go there in 2021. I also really loved how easy it was to make sustainable choices when I was in Costa Rica. I think in a lot of places that I've travelled to, it sometimes feels almost like an afterthought when you see sustainable options. But in Costa Rica, you can easily stay in eco-friendly accommodation and visit local independent businesses and eat local organic food and great options for veggies and vegans as well, which makes it's lovely if you want to look for a more sustainable itinerary once you're there. So it's quite hard to pick where I want to talk about in Costa Rica, because I could go on about it for ages, but I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to focus on the Nicoya Peninsula, which is in the northwest of Costa Rica on the Pacific coast. So it's this at the top in the northwest, that kind of little foot that's coming out. And Nicoya is amazing. I think if you want to focus on one area of Costa Rica and maybe do it a little more in depth, because it's not huge, so you can get around it and get to know it a bit better. And you can actually also, if you wanted to have a little road trip as part of your Costa Rica adventure, you can drive from the north to the south. I think it's about 140 miles long. But actually, it's quite a rough coastal track, and you need to have a 4x4. But it's this incredible journey past these beautiful white sand beaches, and across along the Pacific, which is also really well known for its surf in Nicoya. It's a bit of a surfer's mecca. So I just think it's a wonderful place to go exploring. And well, I was really interested to go to it as well, because Costa Rica is one of only 7 countries in the world that has its own blue zone. And for anybody who doesn't know what blue zone is, it's an area where people usually live to be over 100 years old. And scientists actually study the people of the Nicoya Peninsula to work out their secret to this long life. And Costa Ricans are also said to be some of the happiest people in the world. So I was really keen to see what the lifestyle was like in Nicoya, and maybe learn some pura vida lessons when I was there. So welcome to the Nicoya Peninsula. It is known for surfing and wildlife and a really relaxed pace of life. And yeah, it's just somewhere that I would love to go back to. It's got a handful of national parks and wildlife refuges, and some of them are really special places. You can just hop from refuge to refuge. There's one called Barra Honda, which has a cave system you can go spelunking and exploring in. And there's another one called Las Baulas de Guanacaste, which is home to leatherback turtles. I'm going to write all these down for you guys as well later. And there's also Kuru Wildlife Lodge, which I went to, which is really special. And I'll be talking about that in a minute. So if you are going to Nicoya, I think it would be pretty amazing all year round, but apparently September to October is the absolute best time to go, because you can actually see whales migrating, which I would love to see. And it's also a good time to see the turtles nesting, and that is a really, really special kind of bucket list experience as well. So I'm just going to talk about a few of my favourite bits of the Nicoya Peninsula. So the first spot is Nosara. So Nosara isn't the main town in Nicoya, but it's kind of the main one that I would say travellers would gravitate to. And it's all about surfing and yoga. It's amazing. It's a really laid back town to visit. It's got a very international vibe. It's got a jungly interior, which you can kind of see in this photo. And then it's got a beautiful coast, which is famous for incredible sunsets and also for really good, reliable surf, which is quite good for all levels as well. And there's 3 main beaches in Nosara. Playa Guiones is the main one, which has a really good beach break. So it's good. Even if you're a beginner surfer, you can have lessons there, but it's quite good for more experienced surfers as well. And I just really love Nosara because it's very laid back. This is what literally I feel like every hotel and hostel in Nosara is like. They all have hammocks. It's very chilled out. Everybody's there to surf and do yoga and surf and do yoga. It's really, really good fun. It also actually has its own nature reserve nearby, which is called the Reserva Nacional de Fauna Silvestre Oceanal, which has olive ridley turtles, and you can see them laying eggs and also hatching out there, which is amazing. I went one evening after dark with one of the local guides. You have to go with an official wildlife guide to watch the turtles laying their eggs, which is probably the weirdest night out I've ever had. It's this highly strange experience, but also very cool. And I'm very Costa Rican. It's really lovely. I would love to go back and watch the little turtles heading out to sea. I think that would be, the summary of Costa Rica, to see both of those. Another thing I really liked about Nosara is that there are great accommodation options, even if you are on a bit more of a budget. So even if you, for example, we saw some lovely chilled out hostels that will have hammocks and kind of wooden decking, and some of them start at about £10 a night, which is great if you're backpacking on a budget. If you want to go a bit more expensive, I stayed at the Harmony Hotel, which I think is about £190 a night, which is a bit more of a blowout, but it is really kind of epitomizes Nosara because they have a yoga shala where you can have free lessons every morning. So we did yoga every morning, and they also have free surfboards that you can just pick up. Oh, sorry, can you not hear me? I know you can. Okay, good. And then it also has free surfboards, so you can just take surfboards over to the beach, which is a pretty special way to start your day in Costa Rica. So yeah, so that's an aside. I think that makes a nice jumping off point before you go a little bit more off the beaten track. And the two other places I want to talk about that I thought were really, really special in Nicoya. So the first one is the Matambu Indigenous Reserve. So the Matambu Indigenous Reserve is home to the Chorotega people, who are an indigenous tribe of Costa Rica, and they run sustainable programs for tourists, which means that you can visit them and go out and explore the reserve with a local guide from the reserve. It's a little bit more off the beaten track. There weren't a lot of other travellers there when we were there. I haven't seen it in a lot of guidebooks. It's a really wonderful way to kind of get a little bit more under the skin of Costa Rica and go local and maybe kind of connect a bit more with more traditional ways of living in Costa Rica. And also a great way to give a little bit back by supporting a local initiative. So there's a village called Guatil, and that's kind of a great place to centre yourself. It's also in the blue zone, so everybody there's all these people walking around who are hundreds of years old who just look fantastic and are living this really healthy life. And they make pottery, they make honey. You can have dinner with a local family. You can go hiking on all these beautiful jungle trails that go through the reserve. And they also make these traditional homes which you can watch. So like the thatched house in the photo, which is really cool. And you can also help out with the coffee harvest while you're there, which is a really wonderful way to kind of get to know Costa Rica, one of Costa Rica's biggest crops. And they also have a lot of organic produce, which is a nice way to buy local, eat local. And if you do want to take home a souvenir from Costa Rica, the pottery that they do there, you can actually join in and have a go at making your own little pot. So I brought back this little guy. I know I'm very small on camera, but I don't know if you can just see my little pot here with a face. He's come home from Costa Rica with me. I wasn't very good at pottery, but the Chorotega potters are incredible. They've been making pottery in the same way for thousands of years. So you can buy a unique souvenir and take it home, which is a nice way to support, a local business as well. And then the final thing I want to talk about is the Kuru Wildlife Refuge. And another thing that Nicoya is really famous for is its incredible wildlife. And all of the refuges look absolutely beautiful, but I thought Kuru was really special because it's home to quite a few different kinds of environment. It has tropical forest, and it has mangrove swamp, and it has beautiful white beaches. And those are home to iguanas and lots of kinds of monkeys and wild deer. And I think they have 200 species of birds. So if you're into bird watching, it's also a good pick. And they also have these cabins you can stay in, which are very basic and very cheap, but they're actually quite special because the capuchin monkeys come and visit you, and they come and hang out on your balcony in the mornings, which is a pretty cool way to wake up in the jungle. But look at the beaches, it's just absolutely beautiful there. It's very remote as well. So if you want to escape the crowds and feel like you have a bit of space to yourself, it's lovely. And but yeah, the most special thing about Kuru is actually at night time you can take a boat or a kayak out with one of the guides onto the sea, and when night falls something really special happens, which is bioluminescence. So Kuru Wildlife Refuge is known for this incredible phenomenon which happens and most nights. I think clear nights are the best, but if you're out on a boat when it gets properly dark, you'll suddenly see a sky full of stars and a sea full of beautiful bioluminescence, which I'd never seen it before, and it absolutely blew my mind. It's incredible. So you hop out in a boat and then you can actually jump in and go for a swim or go for a snorkel, and it is really mesmerizing. You feel like a wizard because you're just kind of glowing underwater. You can see all these little blue sparks around your body. It's really, really incredible. And I think it says something for Costa Rica that it's just one of the many amazing things that I saw and did there, and those are the things that will make me always want to go back. I absolutely loved Costa Rica, and I think I was only there for 10 days, but I still feel like I really understood a little bit more about why they call their lifestyle the Pura Vida, and I really, really hope I can go back next year. So yeah, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Oh, Sean, that was terrific. Oh gosh, this is just getting, my feet are just getting itchier and itchier. I think we all want to go. Thank you all the people as well for your comments. In fact, got lots of recommendations coming up, and a few people asking questions and spellings of things. And just to reiterate, we will be sending out a follow-up email, which Sean mentioned as well, with place names in it. So without further ado, we'll announce our next speaker. We'll be seeing Sean again in a minute, but for now, we'd like to welcome Alex Robinson, who's been to Costa Rica many times.
Hello, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us this evening. So I hope you've got a good taste of what it's like to be in Costa Rica. I'm going to give you a further taste, very much a personal one. I also want to talk about why I think Costa Rica is important and place it a little bit in context. So, first of all, most notably, Costa Rica is absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, but as Lyn mentioned, these are landscapes which not all of them are ancient and primordial. This is not the center of the Amazon. Costa Rica is a tiny place. It's only a little bit bigger than Wales, which always seems to be the country we compare things to, but it packs so much in such a small area, and many of the landscapes are recuperated. It is only because of tourism that Costa Rica is wild. It's only because of tourism that the species are returning in great numbers to Costa Rica, the turtles, the macaws, and in the south of Costa Rica, even jaguars on the Osa Peninsula. So Costa Rica isn't just a wonderful destination to visit, it absolutely is, and I'll show you why I think it is in a minute. It's also a place which is really at the, and has long been, at the very forefront of sustainable tourism. I'll give you a key example of this. The first time I went there in the 1990s, I was walking around a forest reserve in the south of the country with a Costa Rican guide. And I said, what was this place like in your father's generation? And he said, oh, it was just farmland. It was farmland with scrubby forest. And in my grandfather's generation, everybody was poaching and killing the animals. And I said, so what changed? And he said, what changed is now we have jobs. We have jobs as guides. The people who were poachers, their children are now guides. And that's really the story of Costa Rica sustainability. It is the reclaiming of the wilderness in a sustainable way, which gives income to the local people. And the Costa Rican model has become the model of sustainability in Latin America. So if you go to places in Brazil, which are much wilder and have a far greater biodiversity, there are only lodges there, like Cristalino Jungle Lodge, because of what Costa Rica has achieved. So tourism, visiting Costa Rica really makes a difference. It makes a difference to Costa Rica, but it also shows the rest of Latin America that it's possible to have sustainable living through tourism. So let me give you a little idea of my experiences of my various trips to Costa Rica. So this first slide we're looking at is actually a volcano right in the middle of the country. If you think of Costa Rica as a European country squashed together. So you have these two beautiful coastlines, an Atlantic Caribbean coastline, a Pacific coastline, and they've been pushed together so that the middle all peaks up into mountains, and those mountains in the center are pocked with these giant volcanoes. This is one of them. It's called Arenal. Now, Costa Rica is so comfortable and so easy that you forget that it is actual wilderness. And when walking around the forest on this mountain here, I had a first-hand experience of this. My guide dropped me off because I said I wanted to do a solo walk. He dropped me off at one end of a path and said, I'll meet you at the other end in an hour. So I was walking along this path right up in the forest that you can see on this volcano, and suddenly I heard this chattering of teeth like this, and I happen to know what that was because I've been in the Amazon previously. It was the sound of a wild bush pig, Latin American bush pig, called a peccary. And these are, well, they're vicious bastards, to put it mildly. You do not want to meet peccary, and I was absolutely terrified because peccary, they're rather like the piranhas of the pig world. They attack in bands, and they just go for your ankles, and they've got savage, sharp teeth. So I was terrified. I went sprinting down the path across the lava field, and I did that hour-long walk, well, in about 20 minutes. And I had no idea. I didn't think, well, I'm in the middle of wilderness. Why? Because the beginning of the path was right next to this beautiful, comfortable lodge, and I had no idea that I was really out in a place which had, well, potentially dangerous wild animals. My guide, when I met him, laughed at me and said, no one in Costa Rica has ever been killed by a peccary. So I was making a big fuss, but it was a real taste of the wild. Anyway, so This place that we're looking at here, Lyn has mentioned previously, is Tortuguero National Park. We've heard about the amazing beaches there, these creeks, these brackish creeks behind where you see all sorts of animals, sloths, bull-faced capuchin monkeys, caiman and crocodile. Just further down from those wonderful beaches, which you are not allowed to use, to swim off, they're about 100 kilometers further along. There are even more beautiful beaches, which have got this fluffy white powdery sand. There's a wonderful place there, very laid back little village called Cauita. And there I had another taste of Costa Rican wilderness. I was wandering out of my little backpacker lodge one evening, not really thinking about too much. And suddenly a dog rushed in front of me. It was chasing something. It was chasing a skunk, and the skunk sprayed this dog right in the face. The dog went crazy, and it also sprayed me. So I got covered in skunk. You don't want to be covered in skunk. But again, that was a taste of the Costa Rican wilderness. I managed to get it off. The secret is lemon juice. If you get skunk on your boot, it's lemon juice that gets rid of it. But again, walking in this little idyllic village, Cauita, where the locals all look like they're from Jamaica and speak with a thick Creole Jamaican type accent. Why is that? Because all along the coast of not just Costa Rica, but Central America, you have these communities of islanders who came from the Caribbean islands and set up away from the colonial interests, the British and Spanish ones, in these little pockets of villages, and you find those in Costa Rica and in Nicaragua and Honduras and further up into Belize to this day. So there's this diversity there as well. Looking here, this is a place, it's actually a national park, a very little visited one. It's called Teraba Sierpe. Now, as well as having these absolutely stunning rivers and mangrove forests, Teraba Sierpe was also the absolute locus, the central point of one of the few indigenous civilizations of note in Central America. They were called the Diquis culture, and between 500 and 1500 AD, they built these giant 2-meter wide, perfectly round petroglyphs, and you can see them here in this national park. It's fairly remote. Getting there is tough, but you can also see them if you want to in the National Museum in the capital of Costa Rica, where you will arrive inevitably, which is called San Jose. This next slide here is one of the gorgeous beaches in the Nicoya Peninsula. We've heard a little bit about the Nicoya Peninsula from Sian. Now, this particular spot in the Nicoya Peninsula is my absolutely favorite. It's called Santa Teresa. To get to Santa Teresa, it's a long and very, very bumpy drive, but it is absolutely worth it. The beaches, there's just miles and miles and miles of gorgeous white sand, broad beaches, some of them backed by rainforest-covered capes. And in the middle of this tiny little village, a single dirt street with all these wonderful modish little restaurants and hotels. It's a place where, in secret, Hollywood celebrities go for their vacations as well, in very small numbers. But you can be walking along this beach and bump into Chris Hemsworth or Mel Gibson, or as I did, the model Gisele Bündchen, who has a house here. So again, this surprise in the middle of nowhere, at the end of a 3-hour drive along bumpy dirt roads, you're on a beach and suddenly there's Gisele Bündchen or Mel Gibson. It's very strange. And in the middle of the rainforest. This is a similar beach in another peninsula at the far end of the country. It's called the Ossa Peninsula. That's actually the view from the room in the lodge where I was staying. And again, a half-hour walk from that room in the other direction, away from the coast, there are wild jaguars hunting in the rainforest at night. And that was the rainforest in Corcovado National Park, where the guide told me that his grandfather had been poaching the animals, killing the animals, and where much of the growth is secondary. It's grown up only in the last couple of generations, but now it's wild enough to have jaguars hunting. Here we're looking at one of the other volcanoes, very easy to reach. This is about a 40-minute drive from the international airport, next to a beautiful hotel called Finca Rosa Blanca, which I'll show you in a minute. It's called Poas Volcano. The volcanoes in Costa Rica, many of them are active. They are fuming, or even some of them rumbling. Arenal, which I showed you before when I first visited it, you could literally lie in a hot spring at night under the stars, hot spring pouring out of the belly of this volcano, and hear the volcano rumbling and see lava swelling up and flowing down the sides. Absolutely extraordinary. This is another of Costa Rica's gulfs. Costa Rica has these peninsulas sticking out of the Pacific coast, and these form shallow fjord-like inlets. This is my favorite, perhaps the most beautiful in my view, the Golfo Dulce, where you have humpback whales and dolphins, turtles and tuna. It's a deep water Pacific Gulf, very beautiful, backed by these steep forest-covered hills filled with, dripping with waterfalls. And little mountain rivers like this one. These rivers are so clean you could put a cup in them and drink the water. Absolutely beautiful, just flowing straight over rock because it's not muddy. This is a steep-sided fjord-like gulf, so the water flows over rock, which is why it's so clear and why it's clean enough to drink. This is a volcanic lake, the center of Costa Rica. As I mentioned, you have this central spine of mountains, the two coasts on either side. The country drops down to those coasts. The central spine, it's filled with volcanoes, but also filled with little volcanic lakes like this beautiful one. Again, ringed by forests, so capuchin monkeys in this forest, coachis that we've also seen, and also something that we haven't heard about, hundreds and hundreds of hummingbird and butterfly species. So you can be walking through the trees to a lake like this, and a butterfly as large as a handkerchief, brilliant iridescent blue, will just flutter out of the forest across your path. Absolutely magical. White sand beaches and also black sand volcanic beaches like this one, also on the Golfo Dulce. So the landscapes in Costa Rica are so varied, but so are the coastal landscapes. Caribbean beaches as pearl white as the Bahamas, long black sand beaches like this, long white sand Pacific beaches on the Nicoya Peninsula that look like you're in a tropical California. So in this tiny country, all this diversity in many different manners of landscapes. So beautiful landscapes, breathtaking, but also very easy adventure. Somebody asked a question about, you know, I'm getting on in years. Is Costa Rica a place where I can visit and have light adventure in relative comfort without having to hike for miles through sweaty rainforest? Absolutely. So this is on the Golfo Dulce as well. Kayaking, very easy kayaking. You get your boat tugged there by a speedboat, and then you can go kayaking gently on current-free water through mangroves for 10 minutes, half an hour, or more if you wish. But it's all very easy adventure. If you want something more hardcore, that's also possible. But there is adventure for all levels of ability in Costa Rica. Also, off-road driving. This is driving on the Nicoya Peninsula. This involved, because I went at the wrong time of year, and we'll I'm sure address questions about when is the best time to visit later on. I went at the wrong time of the year, the rivers were flooded, and I had to be, me and some other cars, including these ones, had to be escorted across some of the fast flowing rivers by the locals. So easy, sort of, but if you do it at the right time of year, but off-road light adventure as well, with a beautiful destination at the end of the road. We've spoken a little bit about the canopy walkways in Monteverde Cloud Forest, which is a stunning destination, not just for its landscapes, but for its extraordinary birds, including the resplendent quetzal, which is one of the rarest birds. It's a kind of Caatinga, one of the rarest birds in Central America. Again, Costa Rica does not have the highest biodiversity for birds or any other wildlife in the world, but it is one of the best places to see wildlife. And the birds that you see in Monteverde are absolutely spectacular. And it's one of the few places in the world you can see resplendent quetzal, even though it's more widespread in places like Guatemala. So you see them from Monteverde, but you can also see birds and primates here in the Arenal canopy walkway as well, around that volcano which I showed you earlier. Wonderful waterfalls everywhere. So hot springs, yes, but also gorgeous waterfalls. This is one in that fjord that I showed you about, called the Golfo Dulce, plunging down the mountain and, like the rivers, clean enough to drink straight from. Surfing, we've heard a little bit about surfing too. Surfing on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica is extremely fine. There are actually championship surf beaches, so that's your hardcore surf adventure, but also it's a great place to learn how to surf because there are many much milder, much calmer surf beaches too, and some of those beaches literally lie one next to the other, especially around places like Santa Teresa in Punta Arenas province. Okay, so beautiful landscapes, easy adventure, and comfort. Comfort at the kind of budget that you would expect if you were going on holiday in Europe, but the levels of comfort are greater than you would get in, say, Spain or Portugal for your money. So this is the private plunge pool in a hotel again off Arenal volcano, and this is the beautiful, almost hobbit-like molded room in a converted coffee hacienda called Finca Rosa Blanca, which is about 20 minutes from the international airport, yet in the middle of nowhere. And here in Tortuguero National Park, which Lyn spoke about, this is where you stay. So yes, you are out in the wild, but you're in a pool like that, next to a creek with crocodiles in it. So you can be in that pool and look out and see crocodiles, see parrots flying through the trees, and yet you're staying in the kind of comfort you would expect in a good European hotel in an urban area. This is the kind of bohemian level of comfort that you get in the Nicoya Peninsula. This is actually a 5-star resort. It's on Santa Teresa Beach. It's called Latitude 10, and it's just a gorgeous, low-key, romantic place to stay. Your rooms are completely open to the forest if you want that. The showers are al fresco. So you're having a shower and literally you're looking up and there's a sloth above you in the tree as you're doing so. And then the beach, and what a beach, is 2 minutes walk from your front door. Here is the interior of Nayara Lodge, one of the beautiful rooms. Again, this is in the center of the country, but this is absolute luxury in the wilderness. And there is nowhere that I know of, certainly in Latin America, which offers the level and variety of very comfortable places to stay with quality food in a wild or semi-wild environment. Costa Rica is the best place for that. Great food and healthy food too. So what's Costa Rican food like? Well, Costa Rica doesn't have a national dish. What you do get, though, is very high quality, often organically grown produce and a kind of pan-Central American cuisine, much of it tailored for the US palate, because most of the visitors to Costa Rica come from the States. Okay, fabulous wildlife we've heard quite a lot about. Now, before I leave you, I just wanted to mention one other thing about Costa Rica, which I think we haven't heard about, which is kind of key. Costa Rica, as you know, is in Latin America. Latin America is absolutely stunning, and Costa Rica is the perfect introduction to the vast landscapes that you get further to the south in places like Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. So as a first-time destination, which is comfortable, easy, everybody speaks English, Costa Rica is a really great choice.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. And gosh, you covered so much there. And in fact, you answered quite a lot of the questions, probably without even realizing it. So welcome back to Chloe and Sean. And I see you've been busy on the chat box. You've had so many questions. I'm hoping that 10-year-old Corey is still on, because I'm going to answer the first question myself, being into wildlife. And he asked how many animals are there, different types of animal are there in Costa Rica. I do happen to know that one. Does any of the rest of my panel know before I say? Can you guess?
Thousands.
Total no.
There's over 500,000. Over 500,000. Now, admittedly, I think something like at least half of those are insects, because there's lots of insects. Nice, friendly insects, but lots of insects. But obviously, as we know, there's lots of birds, there's lots of mammals, there's lots of everything. And so it really is remarkable. And I think to pick up as well, Corey, on what Alex said, is that you can see the wildlife. So you go to some places in the world and they've got all this amazing wildlife and you don't get to see it. In Costa Rica, you're going to see it. So, yeah, so it's really good. And talking about, Corey's quite grown up, really, being 10. But I know we had somebody asking about taking a child of around 6 or 7. Chloe, have you got any advice on that?
Yeah, my sister's best friend took her kids last year, who are, I think, 4 and 6 or 5 and 3. And they were asking me loads of advice because they were so worried about, is it just too risky and dangerous and adventurous for quite small children? Yeah. And I said, no, you can do it, but you need to plan just to make sure you figured out the journeys and things, because they wanted to self-drive and the roads aren't the best in Costa Rica. I remember when I was out there, our guide called them a Costa Rican back massage, because every journey it was like, so that's especially around Monteverde. So they kind of planned their route really carefully to make sure they kind of read enough that they felt confident. But I think it's great for kids. I mean, being able to see some of that wildlife from a young age would just make me want to go and kind of be a guide out there or something. So yeah, I'd say definitely it's good for kids.
Oh, it's brilliant. Before I ask another question, we've had a couple of people at me early ask about the recording. We've had a couple of different people who are late on asking of same. So yes, we are going to be sharing a recording of tonight. We'll be sending out the email in a couple of days. We will have a list as well of the places that Chloe, Sean and Alex have mentioned. So do not fret, that we will list all of those. Right, more questions, because we have got a lot. When to go, Alex? I know it's very hard to summarise because obviously you've got 2 different coasts, you've got all those different, areas within it. But can you give us a really brief overview?
Well, I would say that if you're looking for a simple answer to that, November to April. But the Caribbean and the Pacific, they have quite different rainy seasons. So there are heavy rains on the Pacific side between April and October, but as Lyn mentioned, October is also the best time to go to Tortuguero. So, without going into too much detail, between November and April is probably the best time. Though avoid Easter week, because that's a national holiday and places are packed with ticos, as the locals are called, because Costa Rica is a fairly prosperous country, and it has a decent size local tourism industry as well. So avoid Easter weekend and also avoid Christmas.
Okay, thank you. Sean, somebody was asking about hiking. Have you got any suggestions generally, even if you're not hiking, about what gear to take? Do people need to take anything in particular? And do you need any degree of fitness?
I think Costa Rica would definitely suit all levels of fitness. You'd find a lovely adventure to suit you, but it is really, really good if you are into hiking and going a bit further off the beaten track. I would definitely agree with Alex that it's a good idea to have a guide if you're going hiking, because even if you're used to hiking in the UK, you don't know what's waiting around the corner in the Costa Rican jungle. So we also saw some peccaries far away, and I was actually very pleased to have a guide. So, and also, I'm not to generalize, but then, you know, not all the paths are massively well signposted. So it's a good idea to have a good map, or even better, to have a good guide when you're going a bit further off the beaten track. That said, in places like around Arenal volcano, I seem to remember there were some really nicely signposted, easy trails to follow to walk up to the volcano, which is incredible. And some of them were they would even be wheelchair friendly, a couple of them. So I'm sure you could seek out hikes to suit you. In terms of what stuff to take, I would definitely recommend having some really good hiking boots if you want, wherever you want to go, really, because as we've seen, the roads, even the roads aren't in great condition in lots of places, and the trails, especially in rainy season, can be quite challenging. So a good pair of fabric hiking boots that aren't too heavy and won't make your feet too hot is a good shout. A decent backpack and kind of that kind of light long sleeve travel clothing is really good to keep you cool, because it does get very hot. And maybe swimsuits, because all I did every day was swim. It's just a wonderful place for swimming. But I really think there is an adventure to suit pretty much all levels of ability, which is great.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Somebody asked about workations. They didn't use that awful word. I'm just using it. If people don't know what a workation is, it's when you actually don't just go on holiday. You combine work and pleasure and work overseas. And they asked whether it's suitable for that. And of course, now that we're so many of us are working from home, I think a lot of people are thinking about working overseas. Now, I've certainly got the impression before that it's a good place for a workation. But do any of you want to say anything about that?
I know Puerto Viejo is supposed to have quite a up and coming digital nomad community building. So I think on that Caribbean coast, because places like Tulum and Mexico have got so overrun with that scene now, I think people are generally trying to disperse and find their own new spots. So I think Puerto Viejo is a really good place, and it's very lively and young and kind of would suit the kind of digital creator nomad scene. It's quite appealing to us right now because we're all stuck kind of in our bedrooms and our living rooms. we might all go there next.
Santa Teresa as well. Santa Teresa has got a big expat community, excellent internet, and you know, you can buy your own food and cook it easy enough. And there are lots of restaurants as well. Well, sufficient numbers of restaurants. And yet the wilderness is on your doorstep and there are wonderful beaches. So that's a good destination.
I also believe that if you're into wildlife, that lots of the reserves and refuges take volunteers for different lengths of time, which I think is of all the places in the world to do it, it's probably a bit more kind of certified and a bit more looked after in Costa Rica, because they really are great, the refuges that I saw. So if you wanted to do a couple of weeks of volunteering and you're into wild animals, that could be great. I think maybe the Jaguar is a refuge as that. Yeah
they do. It's fully run by volunteers.
They do. That's a really good point, Sean, because in fact I looked up the place I mentioned in Tortuguero for the conservation, and it's called Sea Turtle Conservancy, STC. And they've actually mentioned they've had a worrying year this year, because obviously they've had a shortage of international volunteers and they rely on them so much. And so they are desperately going to be, they want volunteers next year for sure.
It's also a great place to learn Spanish. There are lots of language.
Well, I ask you about language, because, you said, Alex, about everybody speaks English. Is that absolutely right? But presumably... people still speak Spanish as well, so
people. Latin America in general, it can be outside bits of Mexico and Costa Rica. It can be hard to find people who speak good English, except in tourist resorts. Costa Rica, it's easy. I think you get much more out of the place if you have some Spanish first. People interact with you in a completely different way, and you get much more a sense of what it's like to be integrated with the local community. And there are negative sides to the English as well, especially around places like Guanacaste, where you hear more English than Spanish, and you feel that the local people have almost been pushed out of some of the large swathes of condominiums. So yes, it's better if you can speak some Spanish, but if you absolutely need to speak English and that's what you feel more comfortable with, there's nowhere better in Latin America for that, really.
Exactly.
Other than Belize.
Oh yeah, but no, okay, great recommendation there. And of course, like anywhere, I'm sure locals just appreciate it so much more.
Definitely.
If you, try it out on them at least. We've had a few questions about people asking about length of time there and how long they should spend. Anybody want to give an opinion on that? Because of course it's not a very big country, is it? But yet there's so much there. And torturous roads in places as well.
Well, it depends what you want to do. And depends whether you're willing to take those little turboprop planes. I think they're fantastic, and as Chloe mentioned, the views are just stunning. So if you're okay with that, then a couple of weeks, then you can have a really good idea of what there is in Costa Rica to see. You can see Tortuguero on the Caribbean coast. You can see the volcanoes in the Central Strip, and then you can either do something in Nicoya or the other peninsula, the Osa Peninsula in the south, on the Pacific. So 2 weeks is enough. If you just want to, 2 weeks is also a good amount of time. 10 days to 2 weeks if you're going to a long haul destination in any case, because there's a big time difference. You're going to spend the first couple of days at least feeling jet lagged and not having much energy to get out there on those rainforest trips. So I wouldn't really go for less than 10 days to 2 weeks. 3 weeks, you can do the same kind of itinerary with a lot more leisure. You can spend a good chunk of time relaxing on the beach at the end and have a good rest alongside your wildlife experience. So I would say a minimum of 10 days to 2 weeks, and 3 weeks is enough to have to get a more in-depth experience, so to speak. But of course, you can extend it. 3 months is a good amount of time.
3 months. I think we're all dreaming of that at the moment, aren't they? Yeah. I saw one of those house rental websites, or a home swap one. I saw a place where they wanted somebody to stay for a year, and I thought, wow. And it had amazing Wi-Fi and everything. A few people have been asking. In fact, Sean, yes, you can answer this one then, as you already have in the box. So people have been asking about San Jose. So whether to stay there or not, and where to stay if not.
There's nothing wrong with San Jose, but there's so much more exciting stuff outside of San Jose that if unless you're there for months, I would say just get out and go somewhere exciting. And I think somebody quite rightly said that you can get out of the airport quite quickly and get somewhere exciting. And but there's nothing wrong with it. But I don't remember. It's not particularly charming or historically exciting. And there's so much to do in Costa Rica. You're better off just hitting the ground running. So yeah.
I remember when we went, we ended up going to a place called Naranjo, which is like 40 minutes out of San Jose, and we stayed there for a night. And it's really stunning, and you don't feel like you're near the big city. And I think San Jose kind of has a reputation for being quite congested. It's like a passing through place just to get to the other places when you're on holiday. It's probably not a place you go as a tourist for a long period of time. So yeah, Naranjo, which is up in the mountain kind of area just north, is my recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, Finca Rosa Blanca would be a similar place. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely right. San Jose isn't one of Latin America's fascinating colonial gems, let's put it this way. It's a modern it's a modern concrete city with quite a lot of congestion and not much shade.
Yeah. Somebody's just recommending to always take a soft bag rather than a suitcase, especially when taking small planes. I think we'd all agree with that, wouldn't we? I did see a few people struggling with big suitcases, and which, nothing wrong with having a wheelie, for instance. But I do tend to agree that the softer ones tend to be better than the hard-sided ones. It's more that type of destination. It's like you say, Alex. I mean, it's an easy destination in so many ways, but at the same time, you're staying in lovely lodges. You've got, you have got slightly rough paths sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so on.
I think a soft bag with wheels you've also got to be slightly careful about your weight limits for those small plane internal flights, because if you've got a 30-kilogram bag with you, it's going to be a pain to drag up a steep path in a rainforest lodge, and some of them are steep. But it's also, you're going to be confronted with having to pay a big excess luggage fee, or being turned away potentially from a flight if it's one of the little turboprops.
Yeah, so go light. And of course, Sean did mention about lightweight hiking boots. Right, question for Alex mainly. Somebody had camera issues due to humidity when they were there in the rainforest. Have you got any tips on that?
Yes, absolutely. Firstly, well, a couple of things. You should try and get, there are little sachets that you can get, which are dehumidifying sachets. Now, they come often in, when you order something off Amazon or wherever, it often comes in with some of these little sachets of silica gel. You can buy larger sachets of silica gel, which you can put in your camera bag. And you should keep those in your camera bag next to the equipment. And then if your bag gets damp, take all of the equipment out of the bag, put it on the bed, and then hang your bag in the sun to dry quickly. It depends very much on the type of camera. If you've got a camera with detachable lenses, then open the lenses, wipe them clean, put them back. But that silica gel will keep it relatively dry. And if it gets very damp and you get condensation in the lenses, then you need to put that in direct sunlight for a good couple of hours if you can, to get the humidity out of the works.
Great, thanks. Right, we are going to have to wind up in a minute. Chloe mentions as well about don't forget to take a zoom lens. Yes, absolutely. All those little critters are up in the canopy.
The one thing I really regretted not having was a big zoom lens, because there's only so much you can capture on, a standard camera or a phone or whatever.
But having said that, phones are brilliant for the little things like tree frogs and things, aren't they? They do it so well. Question, so Sean and Chloe, any advice for solo female travellers? Do you feel somebody can go there as a solo woman traveller? But Sean? Oh, Sean, you're on mute.
Sorry, I wasn't alone in Costa Rica, but I have travelled alone around a lot of other countries. And I think Costa Rica is actually probably the place I'd recommend, as one of the first places for somebody wanting to go to South America on their own, because it's easy to understand what's going on, because a lot of people speak English, which when you are solo travelling is really useful. And I also found it very, very friendly, quite cosmopolitan. People are more used to seeing women on their own, I think, than some quite remote corners of the world. I felt very, very safe there. Quite friendly hostels where you can meet other travellers. I think it's kind of perfect if you wanted to go to South America and you weren't sure where to start.
Brilliant. Chloe, anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I found it very friendly, very welcoming, and it wasn't particularly difficult to kind of figure out how to get around. And there are so many people kind of traveling the same routes if you want to go to some of the more popular destinations. So yeah, I felt pretty safe there.
Oh, brilliant. Right, so we really are going to have to wind up. So just as a last, each of you then, because we had a couple of people asking about if you could only go to one place, where would you go? So I want you to say that, which I know is so difficult. And where will you go next time that you haven't been yet? You can do that as well. Who's going to go first?
I will.
Well.
Favourite place, Corcovado, without a doubt, because I just can't believe how much I saw within about 3 minutes of being there. And the place I'd like to go next is probably Tortuguero, and probably learn how to pronounce it better.
Yeah, Alex picked me up on my pronunciation, so there you go. We're all good.
Well, I didn't mean to. It wasn't intentional. I would definitely go back to the Ossa and the Nicoya Peninsulas, those two. Where would I like to go next? Well, I'd like to return to somewhere I very first went, the very first time I went, Cauita and the Caribbean beaches near the Panamanian border. Yeah. Can I just also very quickly say one thing about safety? Be careful of using sat-navs when you're driving. They can take you into the middle of nowhere on a dirt road which has no end. And
There we are. That's a great advice. And I wrote down the one about using lemon if a skunk sprays you as well. So, top tips tonight, Alex. Sian, what about you?
I would say my favourite was the Kuru Wildlife Refuge. I think if you're going to do anything in Costa Rica, go to the wildlife refuges because they're so special and unique. And I would love to go back to the Caribbean coast because I was barely there, and I'd just like to see that other side of Costa Rica, which is one of the things I think is so exciting, is that you can crisscross between two coasts, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so unique with that. Well, thank you all. I mean, you three have been absolutely brilliant. I tell you what, I've enjoyed that so much myself, and I know looking at the comments that everybody else did. As I say to everybody still with us, thank you. I mean, most people still are, but thank you so much for joining us. We will be sending out that email in the next few days with the place names and the recording, so you can see it again, particularly if you missed any bits. And so a massive thank you to Chloe, to Sian, and to Alex for that. That's so much info, guys. Thank you. So inspiring. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.